It's a bit of a cold and sort of hazy weekend, so I've decided to take a look at this steering gearbox a little bit. Now, the weather is overcast and it's a bit cold out, so I want to look at the control mechanism here. I took off all the hydraulic lines on it and take this apart. I might have done some more tests, but it looks like these things have been disassembled at some point. So I want to take a look and see what's going on here, because right here is the main control for it, the steering. So let me get this thing apart and get a better, closer look at it. Well, I seem to have found the culprit. After taking off 4 Allen head bolts, we have this little assembly right here. Now this operates, but when you turn the steering wheel clockwise, it comes down. There's a little recess in there, and this thing goes down. When you pull it the other way, it goes up. So the piece I took off, now this piece here goes into that steering column, and when it goes up, it pushes down, and when it goes down, it pushes up. And inside here, let me quickly check the lens there. There we go. So looking in here, this piston goes up and down. What did I find when I went and opened this up? There's water in here. That piston is frozen. It's not going up or down. It's just barely just trying to move. So that piston down there is frozen, and that's not allowing the hydraulic fluid going. Not only is it frozen, it makes the steering hard, because even without the power, when I pulled this out, this steering now easily turns the gear in, and the steering works fairly well. So this little puppy right here, I'm gonna have to tear it apart and fix it. Now I'm also looking at this, and I'm thinking that at some time there is a larger, some sort of a either a roundish bearing or something here to fit in nicer into that column, and it's missing. And I can tell that this thing has been taken off, and nobody's put gaskets back in it. They just crammed it back on with the old whatever material. This doesn't even have a gasket on this side, and this doesn't even have a gasket or anything sealing on it. Well, it has bits of a gasket, but it has all these gaps to let moisture in. So we found our problem. So let's go into the shop and clean all this up and see what we got. Yeah, I'm in the shop getting this thing tore down. Not 100% certain that they put it in the right way, but the more I look like checking it, it looked like it was put in the right way. But I still have a feeling that there's a few things missing. So, but even with those things missing, it should function. It'll be just a little bit sloppy. And I will probably take some educated guesses and maybe put some O-rings and some things in here where I think they might have to go to make it operate better. But I took this snap ring off this end here, and I can see the piston right there, and that thing is frozen in place. So now that I got a better access to it, I'm going to try to carefully twist it. I may have to take this bottom off, which I think I probably ought to. Sort of strange. There seems to be like a wire that sticks right out from the bottom and is bent over. I'm not really sure what that's all about. But I think I probably ought to take this off next. I don't want to be forcing anything on that piston because I don't want to do any damage to it. So let's see if I can let me get pliers and give a little bit of a pull. Not much, but a little bit, and then tear this off, because I think I'm probably gonna have to take this thing all the way apart and clean it up really good. I can tell there's a little bit of corrosion inside here, right there. That was a seal for that piece right there. But not too bad, but that water in there is not a good sign. So I'm actually thinking that once I get it broke free, that it'll probably operate. But I want to do what I can to make sure it doesn't start leaking, because I hate to have hydraulic fluid leaking up into the steering column. Alrighty. Well, I've taken the back cover off and we have rust. So definitely gonna have to tear this thing all down, because it had gotten moisture in there and that piston's froze. I managed to get it to turn just slightly, but not move any more than that. So I just keep tearing this sucker down and get this piston out of here, clean it up, and see if we can get it put back together. Might end up having to wait till the week and get probably maybe some seals from Hydropack, depending on what we got inside. So keep working on it. All right, I removed the nut and I found that this is the control rod assembly right there that goes through the piston to do the controls. And that piston in there, there's a rubber seal right there. That piston is frozen in place. And since the rust is on this side, I'm thinking that this is actually designed so it comes in the other direction. So I think I'm gonna have to push this piston down and out this side. But some of these things, like I'm gonna have to take this and I'll sandblast this, clean it up. Looks like there's supposed to be an O-ring right there, or some sort of ring that's supposed to be there. It's completely missing. So if I can just break this piston free and get it out of there, I can clean up everything in there and get this thing functioning. Well, at this time, I don't know exactly which way this piston's supposed to come out. I've gotten a couple taps and got some WD-40 on both sides of that piston. So what I'm simply going to do is just work it a little bit back and forth and see exactly what ends up happening. I'm just going to tap it down a little bit. Almost sounds like it's bottoming out right there. So I need a small, dang it, I almost need something smaller. There. Well, a good sign is it looks like the piston, I can see it starting to move out. The piston itself does not look like it's corroded. Only around it. Oh. Well, we just seem to have a piston suddenly pop free. And there we have it. Ooh. I just had a thing pop out at me. I don't know exactly from where. So that's not a good sign, because I see that I'm missing the rear O-ring. So I'm gonna have to do some looking. Well, I seem to be lucky, because there was right in the top here, there was this O-ring that was holding in this washer and this spring, and then on that washer down and below. And this washer had just fallen down on the cardboard, but this O-ring and that spring took a leap underneath here. I believe that is all that I'm like missing on this side. I will look around some more, but that makes sense that that would be all that would be required, because you'd have a piece of metal pushing against the O-ring, and then you'd have the spring, and the spring pushing down on the other one, down on the housing down there. So we're actually looking really good, but that O-ring there looks like it's shot, and this O-ring might still be okay, but I think it'll be best to try to track down some replacements from Hydropack. But the piston is now functioning, which is a lot better than it was. Because, oh yeah, I think this went down. Yeah, right there. That was the spring. Just like that. That's pretty interesting. All right. Nope, I'm just going to clean everything up and figure out what I'm going to do. If I'm just going to have to hold until Monday and get some seals or what. But I'm going to take some of these pieces that are rusty and clean them up and get back to it. Well, it looks like that's going to be all for now. Tomorrow I will go to Hydropack because I managed to found pretty much all the O-rings I needed. But this big one right here, the problem with this is, if you can look here, the inside diameter is supposed to be the same as that, and it's quite a bit bigger. Not only that, it's like way bigger than the hole there. So this O-ring is swelled up. I don't know what has actually caused it at any point, but whether or not they had some bad hydraulic fluid or something, or just swelled over the years. But because of that, I can't put it back together because this is all under tension. When I try to put this in the assembly to put it in, it just, because it's too big in diameter now, it just comes out from between the washers. Whoops. Battery died right on when I was in the shop working on the that valve body, and I went down to try to find some O-rings down at True Value, and they had pretty much everything but one big weird fat O-ring, which I thought I could reuse, but it had swollen, and so I couldn't get it to fit back in. So tomorrow I'll have to go to Hydropack to get the seal. But I've closed everything up here. I did open up, this thing's normally supposed to be filled with a gear oil. I noticed there wasn't any gear oil. Somebody like tried to force grease down into it, and it's a real nasty grease, which is like an aviation grease, which I did find on the top of the valve body. If that gets on any of those O-rings, it causes them to swell. That's where I think the swelling came from. But then I noticed that the bottom of the gearbox right here, that had been removed, and there was gasket material sticking out. So I took that off. I squirted some WD-40 through the gearbox, drained it out. There was a big wad of really yucky grease underneath there, so I cleaned that out. So I've got it sealed up. Put because the plate was warped sort of weird in places, I used a cork with a oil resistant gasket maker compound on both sides. So I've just put it in barely tight, and I want it to cure, and then I'll finish tightening the bolts on it. Then tomorrow, when I can get that O-ring, I can put this back together. And if we're lucky, and this is still good, then we'll have a steering available on this machine again. And I noticed, while I'm at it, I noticed that some of these had come off and they have wires holding it, but there's adjustment nuts on here to hold them on. So basically I have to drop these out, clean these nuts, and then readjust them so they stay on without this wire there. So that's gonna be all for tonight. It's starting to get dark and it's getting cold. Well, yesterday went to Hydro Pack, got some seals, rebuilt it, cleaned it up, and then painted it. It's really simple. They've got like this little piston goes down into here, and so when you turn left or right, it's either up or down for the controls. So I don't know which is which. It goes down just a little bit and then up just a little bit. Up's a little hard with the way I'm holding it, but so I put a couple O-rings right here. They're not really there to do much. I only put them in there because it sort of holds this in place without interfering with the motion while I put it in and be able to install it or work with it. Otherwise, it just wants to just flop right out. But I like to have those little O-rings in there, just sort of make it nice. It holds it in. It doesn't really like fall out. But it took a bit of work to get one of the O-rings, which took a little while, but they managed to find a really strange, it's a really huge O-ring for one of it. And then these O-rings, I found out, they come in different hardness rubbers. So depending on how hard the rubber and malleable it is, because we tried putting some O-rings on the piston and it really wouldn't move back and forth because it was too tight. But then we put the same diameter O-ring in with a slightly softer rubber, and it would then be just good hold, but not like really like stuck. So the thing is, now the paint is mostly cured, so I'm going to go out and install this on the machine, and if everything works out, we're going to be running around in the yard causing mayhem. Well, we're outside. I've got the piece here, got it cleaned up. I've got to like mount it onto that. It looks like maybe at one point there is an O-ring for sealing, but there was a very thin, like a gasket material on here before that probably was original, and I'm not really certain that's an O-ring, sort of a sealing lip. So I'm just going to put a very light amount of gasket maker, which I'm just using some of this ultra black, just enough to seal it up so moisture can't get in and out, and I think that'll probably be good, and then I can start hooking the lines back on. And as always, make sure I put anti-seize on the threads. Anti-seize on the threads make it so much easier, eliminates all the rust. All right, well, I will now get these hoses, get the plastic off because they'll be leaking a little bit of hydraulic. Get it hooked on and let's see if this thing works. All right, now here's the whole true test of everything. I've got everything all installed. Got it cleaned up. I got everything moved back. And so now I'm gonna start it. Well, it took a little bit of work. Had the same issue again. Tried to start it. One, I had a bad battery. When I replaced it, the engine was frozen again. For some reason, it just won't turn at all. Won't even budge. So I put the heater on the passenger side, heated it up a little bit, still nothing. Came over here and heated this side up, and within like a few minutes, it would start up really easy. So I started it up. I don't know if maybe something in this is freezing because you know, I've got antifreeze in there, so, and it's not been that cold. So I'm not sure what's going on. If there maybe is something still in here, or if that's just by happenstance that heating this up, all of a sudden it starts. So if it does this again, I will heat only this and see if that's the cause. So let's start this thing up now and see if the steering works. the steering column up and down a little bit is off. I think I can adjust it so it will move a little more in one direction. So I will do that later. So this is awesome. Well, I'm back in the shop. This is Saturday. Earlier I was going to be moving some stuff, but I couldn't get a hold of the truck I needed, so I was going to rebuild the hydraulic valve for the steering on the RT6000, since I don't think it's like centered properly since I put it back together the first time. Then got called on a recovery, and so now I guess it's about 5 p.m. 4 or 5 p.m. and so I am going to, I just pulled it back off the machine, take it back apart, and according to the steering wheel, it wants to apparently turn right much more than it wants to turn left. And in the steering column, there is a little place that if you turn to the right, it goes down, turn it to the left, it goes up. So since it's going too much to the right, I want it go, which is down, I want to go up to be a little bit more towards the straight. Up would mean this thing pivots and pushes the piston down. So the centering of the piston in here should be down probably a very small amount, like a 30/2 of an inch. So I just need to make sure, try to see if there's a way in this valve body, and I think it has to do with like the thickness of a couple washers, to make it so when it is at rest, the piston is just slightly lower. Now let's take it apart. Well, it took like probably an hour or so going through the valve. Came to the conclusion it isn't adjustable. I had to actually take the piston and all the works out and reassemble it outside the housing in order to see exactly how it operates. And the issue is it doesn't matter on the thickness of the washers. That would only increase the spring tension, because the sides of the washers that hit the machine surfaces are exact either way, so you can put stuff around either direction. However, I did notice that one of the washers worked better when I swapped it around. It had less slop and it looked like it fit better, and so I put it back together. And then I still, when I looked at this wasn't quite centered. I had pushed up and pushed down, and I could have way more travel going to the right than the left. And then I realized this block right here, which normally doesn't have these nuts right here, I did that for testing purposes. If I rotate this 180 degrees, this thing is slightly off center. But in the position I have it now, it is straight. And I know when I put it in before, I didn't realize there would have been a difference on whether it was rotated 180 degrees. That must have been something to do with the manufacturing, because all I know is it offsets it just slightly enough to keep this centered, because I noticed that if I pushed up, it wouldn't travel very far because it would hit into the size of this. But on the other side, it would travel quite a distance. In fact, probably farther than what it should, which is making me think that might be one of the issues, because I remember pushing it all the way to the right and everything sort of went skewy and locked to the right. So now I can tell that this thing is perfectly centered, and I will reinstall it and see if it works better. Now the steering column still has a lot of slop in it for up and down, but it holds itself enough. And I just need to make sure that I can apply more pressure to go to the left rather than the right. And looking at it, basically that would be one issue. Now it will travel slightly more to push more hydraulic fluid to the left than to the right. So thinking it was just maybe that block was rotated 180 degrees. So let's put it on. Well, I'm outside. I just installed this, but now I just got to hook the lines up. And it's sort of surprising. I do have a little bit of lip, so it's slightly different depending on whether you have it one way or the other. But it's like minuscule almost. But it's amazing how much that minuscule amount changed the centering of that. I wonder if it had to do with maybe sometime in the manufacturing that it was originally designed to be either way, and because the design of this ended up one direction. I mean, that's a lot of work to machine this in those surfaces, as if they figured it was just cheaper to remake the that little piece there just slightly offset. I think the offset's probably a 32nd of an inch or a 64th. It's not much, but it makes a big difference on how far that little lever can move up and down, because before it would only allow it to go up, which pushes the piston down for the left only a little bit less than the other direction, and the other direction allowed it to go quite a bit. That may be why it did lock up once when I pushed it really hard to the right, and then it didn't want to go back to the left. That maybe I pushed it a little bit past where it should be. Not really certain. I mean, I figured there would have been like a check in here so you couldn't push it more than what you can do, but I don't know. Maybe this won't do anything at all and we'll be right back to square run. Maybe this is wore out, or maybe the steering column is pushing down on it too much. But when I move the steering wheel, it seems the piece that goes up and down seems to hold its place pretty well. So let's hope that this did it. Well, now we're just gonna start it up. It's pretty dark outside. It's got a little spotlight shining in the way, and I can see out behind me. So I'm gonna have to start it up, and I can't hold the camera and the ether at the same time. missing the other four-wheel steer, the crab steer. It's pretty dark. The two-wheel steer is working beautifully now. That did it. Rotating that block 180 degrees allowed that thing to center rather than being slightly off. We're talking 64th of an inch or something. I'm surprised I didn't notice that before. I'd put it on several times, and it must have been every time that I would like put it on and then take it off, I always put it in the same wrong way. So putting it correct made a big difference. Now when I go all the way to the right, it doesn't overcompensate and lock in the right position, and it was easy. I can just turn the steering wheel with my left hand. So let me clean up here, and then we'll finish up on this video. Well, this was a very productive evening. I had no reasonable expectation that today, after the recovery, that I would have a chance to work on the forklift and to get it working. And so it's been totally awesome. I guess we'll be seeing some more on this little project going on here. But I really appreciate all of my viewers. Thank you for watching and subscribing and liking. And you can, if you want to join my Patreon to help support, it'll be down, written down in the bottom links. And also, if there's any thing that you want to mail, the mailing address will be down there. So thank all of you again. Have an awesome weekend, and God bless.